Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Windows on the World. We've done some fascinating shows recently. Go and have a look in the archive. Republic Broadcasting Network, republicbroadcasting.org. Do check out on Windows on the World our archive, especially the last show we did. I think it was on Thursday with Vicky Davis of the technocratictyranny.com. And Vicky Davis used to work with computer systems, so she knows how global governance works. It took her a long time to work this out because we are actually in a real live exercise in a computer rollout of agendas. And this has been thought about for a very long time. And each country has a different part in the agenda, but they are all working together for the Great Reset. And tonight we're going to be talking about how critical thinking and strategy is the only thing to counteract the enablers of global governance. Yeah, good stuff. But our last show is in the archives at windowsontheworld.net also. It's called The Great Reset Explained. And we talk in that show about the perpetrators of COVID and all the rest of it and climate change. They're all the same people. And they all have the same agenda. That's why they're quite successful at it, because they've been working at it a long time. They're highly organised, and guess what? They have millions of useful idiots, wage slaves, and prostitutes in the media and beyond, in every walk of life, to help them enable their global action plan for the common good of everybody. Sounds great, doesn't it? I've got some interesting quotes tonight to start off with. A document appeared in 1987, and I was talking about this on the show last week. But documents like this, though, do not just appear. It's a bit like the Big Bang. What happened before the Big Bang is a childish concept, obviously for very childish minds who've been through the education system. However, it's quite interesting because what happened before this document, what happened before that document? Well, there was a group of elite thinkers, or people who believe that they are elite thinkers, or people have been trained to believe they're elite thinkers, not much difference really, or just programmed drones, as is the case with many of them. And they have become social engineers. And what a lot of people don't get is that the whole system is being played out in real time, and everything that people contribute to it, whether it's negative in their eyes or positive, is part of this rollout. We're basically in a real life exercise, and I think COVID-19 has proved that. And it's also proved how these agendas and, well, exercises are actually very predictable and not very well thought out. You can see that with COVID-19. There's more holes in it. That to use let's use a cliche, there's more holes in it than Swiss cheese. And Switzerland's very important in this because that's where they have Davos. That's where these decisions are made on your behalf, where these people stay in hotel rooms, which cost for one night what a lot of people in this country are trying to live on for a whole year. Oh, the elite say. Well, let's go back to the document I was talking about. 1987, Our Common Future, co-authored by Gro Harlem Brundtland. Look her up. She's now part of the elders. These are people who were mentored into the globalization agenda. And she authored this document called Our Common Future. Now, the reason we're in the position we're in at the moment, and the reason people don't know how to actually go about challenging it properly or with any strategy, is because they haven't read or understood these documents. Okay, let's have a look at how society was going to be shaped into so-called sustainable development. Now, sustainable development is neither sustainable or development. It's actually about control. Let's see what it said in Our Common Future. There's a lot of repetition in these documents, and you can buy this on your website, your sales website of choice, and it'll only cost you £3 or £4. Our Common Future. I wouldn't recommend reading the whole thing in one go, but just cherry pick the bits that you need. Okay, this is from page 46. How are individuals in the real world to be persuaded or made to act in the common interest? The answer lies partly in education, meaning, of course, indoctrination, institutional development, and law enforcement. So what we have here is a totalitarian system which is intolerant to anything outside it, and it's called communitarianism. It is the same in principle as communism. However, there are differences, because in communitarianism, no one will be left behind. Everybody will become part of the new global village, the big society, spaceship Earth, whatever you want to call it. This is their terminology, of course, not mine. Let's carry on. It says the most important, effective participation in decision-making processes by local communities. Are you getting this now? This idea of community, from global to local, by local communities, can help them articulate and effectively, wait for it, enforce the common interest. Enforce the common interest. I'm going to read that again, because this is very, very key to what we're going to be talking about. Most important, effective participation in decision-making processes by local communities can help them articulate and effectively enforce the common interest. Well, that's happened in every town, city and village in the whole of the UK and in many other parts of the world, under sustainable development, under Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 2030. And we're going to be talking a bit about how people are still in the dark about what is going on. I have spoken to people for the past 10 years, telling them that it's a global action plan implemented locally. It's got nothing to do with those idiots in your local council. They are just wage slaves. They are merely prostitutes to the new global governance system. Let's carry on with this. I'll give you another quote. The world must design strategies that will allow nations to move from present destructive processes of growth is destructive, you see, onto sustainable development paths, meaning restriction of everything, rationing for all, and control and management of population. This will require, it says, policy changes in all countries. So, I won't go into any more quotes from that, but just before the show, I was talking to somebody who came to one of our talks, and he's a listener to the show, Chris, and he kind of preempted what I was talking about. In fact, this happens quite a lot. I was putting together a show, and he kind of summed up a few of the things that I was going to be talking about. So I'm going to read out a couple of quotes from Chris's email to get us going. He says, modern education is obviously little more than a method of internalising the idea that obeying is a must. But I wasn't aware of how this had come about, and I don't think it was always the case. Now, what he's talking about here is institutionalised education systems. And of course, the whole purpose of secondary education was to direct and prevent change in the individual, as stated in the Principles of Secondary Education, written by Alexander Inglis for the Rockefeller Foundation in 1918. That one just rolled off the tip of my tongue. I've got loads of this stuff in there, in my highly active and not so minuscule brain. He says, though, equally, education is something which facilitates widespread acceptance of even the most preposterous conspiracy stuff, which I suppose in the mind of the average zombie suggests they are somehow superior or differ from their fellow zombies who ascribe to the equally ridiculous official narratives. And we've seen quite a lot of that recently. Neither group seems able to think for themselves and make up their own minds using the evidence they have to hand. Without the ability to think freely, I think any sort of meaningful resistance against those who seek to oppress and enslave the majority can easily be diluted or dissipated, and will only manifest in the form of street demonstrations, which are about as effective as pissing in your own shoes. Well, actually, pissing in your own shoes is probably more satisfying than going to one of these pointless protests. It says the net seems to reinforce and strengthen the control system already present, as well as reducing any sense of community and atomizing individuals, which I think greatly reduces the possibility of any sort of cohesive and effective resistance. That's a question, by the way. Okay. Well, I think there's some very good points there. I've kind of summarised a couple of paragraphs of what Chris was talking about. But tonight we're going to be talking about the new global health security system, the Great Reset on the back of a mismanaged lie. How the NHS has destroyed itself and its reputation for the new system. COVID-19 has been a great success for implementing the Great Reset. Do have a look on the World Economic Forum website and look at the Great Reset, especially Klaus Schwab. Go to our last article on Windows on the World, all about the Great Reset, and it also includes our last show, which is basically incorporated into the quotes on that article. It's quite interesting because I actually quote what Klaus Schwab, the leader and the founder of the World Economic Forum, was actually saying. So go back to last week's show and you'll find some really interesting stuff in there, if you haven't already heard it. But there is nothing which the Great Reset will leave behind, including you. But I'm already being left behind, and there are ways to be left behind. The global systems of change and control, the management of human resources, and all property on the planet is basically the whole agenda of what COVID-19 was about. Fear is essential as a driver of change and to keep public stability in a system described as a society which enables all to participate in its lies through fear of being ostracized. Now, this is a hugely important point because the only way this current system can actually divide and rule is by attacking those outside the accepted corridor of opinion. But in the big society of communitarianism, I have become an outlier, but I still make an effort so that the numpties and liars will know nothing about what I'm really up to, and that's called strategy. The media drives all agendas. I mean, do you bathe in the effluent, the waste product called the media? Do you engage with the gatekeepers, the human shields who are used to hide the truth of any matter which may dispute the misleaders? Some of these are even a part of the big fake truth media. Those pushed to the surface of the accepted face of alternative, or the conspiracy circus as I call it, are just self-publicists, narcissists and liars. This happens over and over again. A ridiculous claim is made, a new guru appears to bring some major revelation. It is found out to be false, but they can do it every few years, as the public have forgotten about the last one. Now, there's countless numbers of these individuals I've come across over the years. And I've seen them at meetings. I've seen the gullible truthers listen to every word they said. And it takes them usually about 18 months to 2 years to actually realise they've been conned. And then these people can leave it for 6 months or a couple of years and come back again and do exactly the same thing over and over again. And they do. Because I've been doing this a long time and I've seen them coming and going. But yeah, the same thing can be repeated over and over again. When it is found out, let it lie for a few months. That's what the mainstream media do actually as well. So that's where the alternative media is no different, because the alternative media brings up a guru. The mainstream media just do it every few months. In fact, they often just leave it a few weeks before they bring up the same nonsense again. Even when it's been discredited, it doesn't matter. Just reframe it, just lie, attach it to another issue. Very, very simple. But over the years, I've seen so many obviously false prophets come and go, and it's always been obvious to me that the charlatan masquerading as a guru or saviour is just a grade A bullshitter. But let's live in the present. Never has clear thinking been more essential than now. The game is being accelerated massively, isn't it? So there's no time to lose. So we've got nothing to lose. We might as well win. It really does not matter that the thinkers are few and far between, as nothing useful has ever been achieved by those who follow. They have always had their protests and causes given to them. They have been educated into submission. Fear guarantees silence, and that's the main driver of the big society. Unpredictable alliances often escape scrutiny, and that is a really good idea. Unpredictable alliances. Now, that's something to write down and think about. Think about what that actually means. Unpredictable alliances. We are in a society, this new global village, this paradigm, as they call it, where it is not acceptable to say anything outside the official narrative. Otherwise, you're called a conspiracy theorist, and they have their place. They have their place in the mainstream too. Or you can learn how this all works and use strategy. But the neurosis created by shielding from the facts will be the end for those who do it. Now, I've got a few notes on tonight's show I'm going to go into. But the psychological warfare program that they're using to control all this is banal. It's ridiculous. It's stupid because it's for banal, ridiculous and stupid people made by banal, ridiculous and stupid people. Proof of this is the recent post by some time wasters called the Counter-Extremism Group. Now, I'm going to use these as an example of how people who work for think tanks and lobbyists have no imagination and basically don't even know how ineffective and useless they really are because they're being paid for it. Now, this Counter-Extremism Group are a bunch of paid lobbyists and think tank employees who repeat for a living. Combine this with a bit of pointless mainstream historical narrative, and you have another parasitic, pondering and biased bunch of repeaters for radio and television. Yes, these are the sort of people who will be called upon by the media for a quote. They will be called experts, and the word expert has been absolutely abused over the past 10 to 15 years by the media. None of these people are experts in anything. So, their website, counterextremism.org.uk, their first page has a story about counter-terrorism and extremism in Britain since 7/7. Now, if you look at the 7/7 bombings, you will see gaping holes in the official narrative, which of course these people would never even think of questioning, meaning they have no critical thinking abilities whatsoever. Again, brings us back to the education system. So the counter-extremism group is staffed by counter-terrorism and counter-extremism professionals with decades of experience in delivering, wait for it, policy-relevant solutions to governments around the world. Policy-relevant solutions. So in other words, these are informants for global policy. They are not experts in the field that they say they are experts in. They are merely referred to as professionals delivering policy-relevant solutions. In other words, creating the draconian laws and implementing the counter-terrorism measures, which are basically the same, whether it's through your local council, through Prevent, or from international sources. It's all the same template. Policy-relevant solutions, enablers of global governance, not analysts, not there to uncover the facts, but merely to drive draconian policy and, more importantly, keep the fear going. The same sort of experts who appear reading press releases on the fake news channels. Now, their website states 15 years on from the July 7th, 2005 terrorist attacks, and huge progress has been made in tackling terrorism. Well, it's certainly got cheaper, hasn't it? Driving hire cars onto pavements and knocking a few pedestrians over is what terrorism is these days, or was when they last decided to use it. Of course, we had the Christchurch shootings in New Zealand. We've covered all this stuff. But when you look at it, you're looking at one monumental lie to bring in more control and more corporate infrastructure. So these are corporate employees for global governance. They're nothing to do with terrorism. Actually, as a side issue, go back to Land of the Free UK on YouTube. It's still that. We made little documentary series called 7/7 Revisited. And these numpties who are in this counter-extremism group would do themselves a little favour and destroy their worldview by watching those videos, because the whole narrative of the official story falls apart. Absolutely falls apart. And one of the people in the video is David Shayler, ex-MI5 employee, who blew the whistle on the attack in Libya against Gaddafi, which led to the death of about 20 MI6 counter-terrorism officers. And he thought, well, wait a minute, what are we doing this for? And then the rest is history. Now, yes, from terror on the tube to terror on the cheap. Unfortunately, it says, progress has been trickier to achieve in the so-called battle of ideas. This is where they're falling down. Their controlling of the narrative is banal, stupid, ridiculous, and 100% ineffective for those with a functioning brain cell. And I decided to tell them that as well, because they posted this on social media. But yes, there is still insufficient work being done to push back against extremist ideologies and those who promote them. What they mean here is people who can think, who can express themselves clearly. They're not talking about the jihadists and the made up and pathetically contrived, oh dear, yawn far right. But they will be jumping on the bandwagon soon and calling everyone with a brain cell far right, and you know it, they already are. But it says here, the relationship between prevent and counter-extremism work has become confused, and ambiguity about who the government will and will not work with has led to inconsistent decisions being made. Let's decode that. What they actually mean is their prevent program, which is meant to be about tackling it's countering extremism and people who are vulnerable to extremism in local communities by local councils and the police, has been a monumental failure and has actually turned people against the intelligence services. That's what they mean, because it was a waste of time. Prevent is the hated and useless targeting of anyone the local council thought might be vulnerable to extremism. That's what they're talking about, inconsistent decisions. Inconsistent because they don't know what the hell they're doing. It's been confused. Of course it's been confused because the police are getting involved with local councils. Even David Icke had his talk cancelled and he had to go and see a local counter-terrorism officer at the local police station who was part of the Prevent programme. Well, it says here, Watch Counter-Extremism Director of Research Hannah Stewart. It says, talk about her new report. Now, you can see that, and I did watch it. It's only about a couple of minutes long. Basically, this woman knows nothing about, guess what? Anything. So I posted some useful extremist advice on their pathetic Facebook post, and this is what I said. The problem with the intelligence services is they are monumentally stupid, and even the fake terror is so half-arsed it's embarrassing. This woman just said nothing except that prevent is another waste of time, money, and yet another embarrassment. Why make a video admitting that? Well, the reason is because they don't know what they're doing and they're getting paid for it. Where do they find so many useless propagandists, I asked. They could do with some lessons from the KGB, and I put a little laugh and a smiley face there. I know. Get MI5's rejects, hope not hate, in to infiltrate the far right. And another laughing face, because obviously Hope Not Hate tried that and failed. And they tried to demonise Windows on the World by saying that my conspiracy theories could lead people into questioning the moon landings, which would lead them into questioning official narratives and may radicalise them and make them become vulnerable. Well, dear listener, I hope you've been radicalised and I hope you're vulnerable. I hope you're vulnerable to information. Be vulnerable to the truth. In another of their posts, it says, The Times today reports that counter-terrorism policing have been asked by advocacy group the National Association of Muslim Police to use alternative terminology when describing Islamist terrorism, in order that it does not have a direct link to Islam and jihad. Well, jihad does have a link to Islam, really, doesn't it? I mean, you know, it is extreme. It's a very extremist ideology, but without Islam, there wouldn't really be a jihad, would there? You know, I mean, it's a kind of chicken and egg thing. Maybe they'd find another reason for a jihad. I'm sure they would. People have always found reasons for, extreme behaviour, haven't they? He said, but they said that would be a mistake, argues CEG research fellow Emma Fox. Well, Emma, I think you might be right. If you want to see some truly useless navel-gazing and time-wasting, have a look at their website. It's absolutely ridiculous. And these idiots are getting paid for it. One of them was actually part of a think tank in America, which was named after Margaret Thatcher. But basically, have a look at their website, read it and weep, and then feel superior. Because it shows you that these people, because they've been through the education system, because they cannot critically think, are utterly useless. That's counterextremism.org.uk. So, yes, in another of their posts, the counter-terrorism one, just finish that up. It says if you want to see, some points here on their website, you go to their website. I'm not going to go into any more of that now. The point is that all the intelligence propaganda is stupid. It works only as long as the public are afraid of speaking out on what they are being told not to speak out about. It's very, very simple. If you can articulate and argue with these people, then they fall apart. They're a joke. But a recent report in the Irish Times, and this is typical of the communitarian press, which is demonising everyone in such a pathetic way, that now it's easy to win against them. Take a look at windowsontheworld.net on the website. Fact-free Welsh news fails. And there's another one about 5G activists who were basically demonised by the Live Group, which is Reach PLC, which is the Mirror and the Express. They run all of these local live online newspapers, which are there basically to attack the, let's call them the far right. The far right are now people who can express themselves clearly. But a recent report in the Irish Times stated that the so-called anti-lockdown protesters, the anti-vaxxers and the anti-maskers, was being led, this protest, it says, was being led by, guess what? Yeah, you've got it, far-right speakers. Then they said that one of the speakers was a kinesiologist and the other one was a homeopath. So homeopathy and kinesiology are now far-right. Well, of course they are, because those things might actually work. You never know, But part of the COVID action plan and the Great Reset is to speed up the implementation of the smart cities. Death of money, of course, destruction of non-state controlled personnel, the small business, and the rapid acceleration of abolishing all private property. Oh, and of course, getting rid of private transport, making your streets more walkable and promoting cycling. Well, in reality, just getting rid of cars. Now, this brings me to something that's very important and what I've been building up to. I've been talking about the fact that the road closures that are happening in London had nothing to do with cycling. They had nothing to do with cycling whatsoever. The cycling lobbying groups were brought on board to attack the motorist, as was anybody else, from mums to lungs who are worried about their kids in the non-polluted London air. Because they live in these very leafy suburbs, and they are a pressure group which is just enabling the local council to implement the global policies of Davos, the Great Reset, the Club of Rome, and of course the likes of Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, because they are running this show. And the systems of control through the computer systems are really what is running it. But it takes useful idiots to lobby at the local level. But there's a group in Waltham Forest, East London, called Streets for All, and it's a group opposing road closures in North East London. Now, I told the main organiser years ago that the agenda had nothing to do with the council. But like most local groups, they think small. They think the world revolves around them. Now, globalists think big. So in order to deal with this stuff on any reasonable level, you have to see the council for what they are. And what the council are merely human resources for global governance. Idiots on fat paychecks who are in their positions only because they are idiots who want a fat paycheck. They are not there for any other reason. They are stupid mainly, arrogant, borderline retards, most of them, who can repeat sound bites and lie whenever necessary. Prove me wrong on this, I really wish you could, because the borough that I'm talking about here, and the leader, the deputy leader of the council now, the person who implemented these policies of Agenda 2030 there, Clyde Lokes, is now in Oxford doing the same thing on the back of fake climate change. He's one of the biggest liars in local government, and he's on a very big salary. Okay, let's have a look what this local pressure group said. Remember, these lot have been going for nearly 10 years and achieved nothing. Hello again, everyone. There's a London-wide campaign. Low traffic neighbourhoods, LTNs, are being introduced without any consultation under COVID legislation across London. Now, I told this woman 7 years ago that there was no public consultation. They were using Delphi technique, that you would have to go into the meetings, disrupt the Delphi technique, expose the Delphi technique, expose the facilitators and call them out on what they're doing. But no, they kept on writing letters to the council and complaining about the road closures. The council are going to do nothing about it. But she says in this letter, this is provoking a London-wide backlash as roads are being closed all over. Oh, you've started to think outside the box. It's not all about your own street anymore. Are you thinking like a globalist? Well, not quite, but it's a start. New groups are springing up in nearly every borough, violently opposed to the road closures. Oh, that's hate speak. Violent opposer of road closures. Violently opposing road closures. Sounds far right to me. That sounds full of hate. At present, they are full of fire and enthusiasm and thinking that demonstrations and petitions will get the roads reopened. Well, bearing in mind that nearly 2,000 people basically stormed the town hall in protest and nothing happened over 5 or 6 years ago, why do you still think that any of this is going to work? Protesting is part of the global action plan. The globalists need the anti-globalists to implement their policies. The anti-globalists have nothing to do. They are given their banners. They are taken control of by change agents and they implement the policies of the globalists. Okay, let's carry on with this. Islington has managed to have big demonstrations every Saturday. This has not really worked for us in Waltham Forest. We have had the biggest demonstration ever seen in the borough, the one I referred to a few minutes ago. We have had a petition of over 6,000 signatures presented in the London Assembly. We have worked tirelessly to counter the proposals. Well, you must be doing something wrong, mustn't you? Our council has ignored everything. I told them this, I think nearly 10 years ago, actually. But it obviously didn't sink in because I was a bit of a conspiracy theorist. I thought it was much bigger, you see. I thought it was something that was happening all over the world because I'd done the research and I spoke to people all over the world. I'd read the documentation. I'd studied things from Our Common Future onwards and even before. I told them this had nothing to do with environmentalism. It has nothing to do with cycling. It has nothing to do with vibrant, walkable communities. It has everything to do with taking away private property and the right to travel. And here we are. COVID's accelerating it all. She says, however, we fight on. Maybe having all these new groups springing up will start to change things. You see, you cannot solve a problem when the problem has already been absorbed into the system. The problem is part of the solution for getting rid of you. She says, also, we are starting to see some of the emergency services coming forward and saying road closures cause delays. Now, wait a minute. The emergency services were saying this from day one because they put these posts up in the road with locks on and the emergency services didn't have the keys. This was rushed in so quickly that there were fires that the fire brigade could not get to. So all this is old news, I'm afraid. It didn't work then and it's not going to work now. She says it's very encouraging to see thousands more people joining in the argument and understanding that road closures do not help produce cleaner air, but on the contrary, divert traffic onto adjoining roads, which become even more polluted and congested. Well, that's the whole point. So they close down those roads as well, because mums for lungs are going, my children live on that road and they can't breathe with all these cars. On your bike, literally. Walk, cycle, enjoy. That was their mantra. One of the key arguments, she says, the new groups are using is how these low traffic neighbourhoods, is that what they're called? I'll have to go back now. Low traffic neighbourhoods, yes. He says the low traffic neighbourhoods are discriminatory to roads immediately adjacent to the closures, where the tendency is for the less wealthy communities to live. They are campaigning for social justice. Anyone who uses the words social and justice together as a phrase has been clearly indoctrinated into the hateful new system of communitarianism. She says they are setting up a pan-London group. This group is currently meeting on Zoom every Wednesday, and each borough is allowed 2 reps. Wait a minute, I'm starting to see something wrong already. Someone's coming to organise this. There's a gatekeeper. Can you see where this is going? They're allowed 2 reps. I wonder how those reps are vetted. I wonder if they're vetted for sustainability. I wonder if they're vetted for their political views. I wonder if they're vetted to see if they've got a functioning brain cell. Of course. And if they haven't got a functioning brain cell, and they're going to be no bloody use whatsoever, they'll probably be appointed. So, she says they are planning a London-wide demonstration, possibly on the 12th of September. Maybe we should prepare a banner. We still have the placards from previous demos, which obviously didn't work. Again, let us know if you are likely to want to participate. Well, as our friend Chris says, it'd be more fun pissing in your own shoes, because this is not the solution. The stupid protesters who have been kind of coerced into the state-backed protests in the past, like the People's Assembly, are exactly the same template is being used here. But unless you understand that this is a global action plan, then you will have gatekeepers and idiots leading the conversation for you. Only educated people can do anything. This has been proved by many dozens of videos in the archive of Windows on the world. Now, I'm not trying to sound in any way as though I've got the copyright on what's going on, but I've been talking about this for so long, and I've told these people over and over and over again, but clearly they must have been educated. But don't wait for the remedy gurus. You have to do it yourself. So the way to win is to humiliate the enemy, make sure they are told how full of hate and intolerance they really are. Strategy is the key. Protests are written into the programme. Most protest is enabling the global action plan, including a group who I will not name, who are going around the country at the moment doing their Citizen Smith power to the people nonsense, which will not even address the issue. The issue is the people in Davos. The issue is the new system. It's got nothing to do with COVID-19, climate change, or any other bloody useless and over-promoted scam that they bring up to control the narrative of public opinion and to bring in and accelerate the drivers of global governance. So gather intelligence on the fraudsters and liars in office, publicly humiliate them. The misuse of their world will bring them to account. They are misusing their power, and their world will come tumbling down if only a few dedicated individuals start to work effectively. The dumb and dumber position of the state is their Achilles heel. The more they push their fake diversity and describe truth as hate, the further they will fall into their own cesspit. They made their beds, now let's make them lie in it. Make sure they never get up. All those who are interested in strategy and actually disrupting the lies and the idiotic grandstanding of the useful idiots should get in touch with me through the website. I do have a little army of subversives. Very little army. You don't need many. These are people who are willing to think and actually strategize against these brainless dimwits who are overpaid and in office in every council, every town hall, every village, town and city, every part of the media in the UK and beyond. So think big, think like a globalist. Think ahead of what those in Davos and World Economic Forum and all the rest of it, think of what they are planning for you. It's not difficult because they tell you what they're going to do if you want to listen to it. But people who go on protests and keep thinking that doing the same thing over and over and over again when it's failed constantly are their own worst enemy. Remember, the most successful attacks on the enemies of all are never heard about anywhere. Even those on the big conspiracy theory sites, I know because I've had a few suppressed and never reported incidents over the years. Quite successful things, but the alternative media won't report it because it's not conspiracy enough. It's actual fact. And the real media, of course, will bury it and then attack you. Victories are not allowed to be made public, so don't go looking for glory. Look at strategy. Look what you can do behind the scenes. Have a public and a private face. The public face can be there for all to see, but the private is private. So that is why secret societies and private members' clubs were the places where real decisions were actually made. One thing to remember is that the UK will be brought to its knees. The rehearsal has started in Australia, Crown Territory, all this draconian stuff that's going on in Australia and, of course, New Zealand. The police state that's been rolled out there as an experiment, well, that's Crown Territory. So they try things out there, then they do them here. And we have to remember that the UK is a very divided country. It's divided. The Welsh like to keep themselves to themselves, so they've fallen victim to the Global Action Plan through their own xenophobia. It's happening in Scotland. There's still a lockdown up there. And, of course, then we've got other people who are doing good work but are misguided. And those I do feel a bit sorry for, but if they don't listen, then they're wasting their time as well. But no, we're talking about the crown agents of the city. We're not talking about the monarchy when we're talking about the crown here. Its planning committee may meet in Davos, but the fourth industrial revolution starts here. The public still do not seem to realise that real success in problem solving is not in the public interest or for the common good. That might give others the idea that they might be able to implement change, the C word, and that would only be promoting hate, division and mistrust in our vibrant communities. According to Hope Not Hate, websites like Windows on the World can lead you into being radicalised, meaning they take real intelligence seriously in the retarded but hate-filled counter-terror and extremism community which they inhabit for their paychecks and their fake ideologies. So, if you think there is something you're not being told about, like the moon landings might not have occurred exactly as you were told, you might be radicalised into opposing road closures. So, remember, if you're going to oppose road closures, do question the moon landings too. This is where comedy and extremism meet. Hope Not Hate, this advocacy group for rich third-party lobbyists in the UK, which is both a charity and a company, has attacked our show in the most comedic way possible. I was going to use some of their quotes in a video. I was going to get this idiot, this Joe Mulhall, into the video because he's got the sort of face that I think you might find fairly irritating. But the main point is that they're associating people who look into the validity of the moon landings with far-right extremism. This is how retarded these idiots really are. And this is where comedy and extremism meet. What a unique partnership that would be, eh? Extreme comedy. Now that is the greatest weapon against the drones of the state, who would not know humour if it was given to them in a report from one of their think tanks. Laugh at them to their faces and use strategy behind their backs. Give them a more successful version of their own lousy medicine. There you go. I'm a radical. I'm radicalising you into something that might be effective. More to come on this in weeks to come. And also, if you've got some ideas for strategy, contact me through the website. I keep everybody's identity secret, and I will never make anything public unless you agree to it. Because this is not the mainstream media. This is not even the conspiracy circus. This is Windows on the World. So thanks for listening to that. Got a bit serious there for most of it. And we'll be back on Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. UK time on republicbroadcasting.org. I should be doing a live stream next Friday, 9:30 p.m. on our YouTube channel while it's still there. If you can help us, do send in any information you think may be of use. Support us on PayPal and Patreon if you can, and you will get access to stuff that is coming out very soon. We're going to be doing some talks, and hopefully we're going to be doing some screenings of our film, and all sorts of things are going to be happening for people who like the show. So that, dear listener, is it for tonight. Thank you very much, and see you soon.